Right, afternoon everybody. Thank you for joining me this afternoon on the last of our series of webinars. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about training development in general, so a slightly different format to the other ones that we've been doing. If you've missed any of the previous week's training webinars, they are available on the Sitecare website. So if you log into the Sitecare website, you can go back view the handouts and view the lectures of any of the ones that we've done over the lockdown period. And from there you'll be able to see what's coming up in the future as well. So welcome today, we're going to talk about training development. I'm Anthony Blackman and I'm Director of Training here at Insight Optical Training. We partnered up with Sitecare back in October to start doing some training pieces together. And during the session, we're going to talk about what we've got coming up in the future for you as well. So during the next 50 minutes or so, we're going to look at some of the benefits of staff training. We're also going to think about the what, when and how staff training, think about what you need to consider before you start spending your money on training. Also look at the options that are available to you, because there's lots of options out there. Some of them at the moment with social distancing and lockdown are not possible, but there are still other options out there to you to develop your teams. And then we're going to end with a bit about the new CPD scheme that's coming in from the General Optical Council, the new cycle. So CET is going and CPD is coming in. And I'm going to cover a little bit about that while that's out for consultation at the moment. So thinking about why invest in staff training in the first place. Well, there's lots of different benefits to it, but try and sort of summarise those for you. Start off with actually, if you invest in your teams, that's going to actually improve their morale and motivation in the business. You're therefore less likely to have as high a staff turnover. So if you haven't got to go through the cost and the time of recruitment and trying to train up a new member of staff, if you just spend some time on your existing teams. More thinking about the skill set. So if your employees can have more skills and can do more things, they're going to be more efficient and more productive in your business. That's what going to lead to fewer errors, so less waste in terms of product and time, and ideally more profits in the business as well. And we know when we open, we're going to be seeing less patients, so we need to be more efficient in how we are running things. And similarly, having a more flexible workforce is really important as well. So I'm back to work tomorrow. I've been called back for some other dispensing opticians because I'm a dispensing optician, I'm also a lab tech and a contact optician. So my employer's thinking, well, who can do more in the business? Those people are more important and more vital to have at the moment. And similarly with support staff, we've got someone who only works on reception, we've got somebody who does sort of pre-screening or helps with frame choice. Yeah, if your staff are more flexible and can do more, then that's a benefit to your business. But similarly, more highly skilled, better trained and more enthusiastic staff are going to actually give better customer service and improve your customer experience. And we know that actually that thing around customer experience does develop into customer loyalty and how much they're going to spend, and also recommend you as a business to other people. So that's going to maintain and grow your business. But similarly for the actual employees themselves that receive the training, they're going to feel much more appreciated at work, they're going to be happy, have higher morale, more loyal to you as an employer, but also they're subconsciously going to have more job security in their mind. They're going to need less supervision, and in some instances, not always, but sometimes there may be some higher pay or a bonus for them as well. So it's kind of a win-win-win situation here by thinking about how much you can train up staff and different options. Now, over the years, I've worked with several different businesses, and there is a set process when it comes to developing staff. Fortunately, a lot of businesses tend not to follow the principle I'm about to show on the screen here. So start off with, before you actually start shelling out money on training, you need to think about what is it that you want person receiving the training to be able to do or know at the end of it. And look at their current skill set. What is it they do at the moment where they could do better in their competence levels? And from that analysis, we can then work out the training gaps. So we'll go through that on the next slide. And at that point, you can then start thinking about the actual training itself and what that's going to look like. And then the last part, which again, a lot of employers don't do very well, is actually evaluating the outcome of that training. So what's been your return on the investment? Has it delivered what you wanted it to deliver? Because if it doesn't meet your expectations and it doesn't deliver the outcomes you wanted, then that means you need to go back and plan something different for next time. So let's focus on some of these areas in a bit more detail. So we'll look at, first of all, the actual needs, and we call that training needs analysis. So this is looking at actually what is it that your teams need to be trained on. Now, there's a few different methods for this. I'm going to show you the most common one that's used in learning and development circles. And this one looks at 3 levels of engagement. Here we have organisational, we have operational, which is the actual team themselves, and we have the individual. So this model is the McGee and Thayer one. This is most commonly used and the sort of simplest to understand. So what we normally start off with is an organisational level and drill down. So this is a very simplified example. Normally in practice we'd do something a bit more in-depth and a bit more focused, but just to give you a bit of an idea of the sort of thing that we cover with this analysis. So thinking about the work that we've done with a company at the end of last year, was looking at operationally as an organisation, their year-on-year sales were down. So that's looking at the organisation as a whole, how was it? So then start looking down across their 5 practices to see actually in the practice level, the average order value was lower and they were dispensing less additional pairs to each patient. So the diaries were still full, they were still dispensing lots of people, but the amount of actual revenue per patient was down. And then we draw down from the team level then to the individual level and think about the actual people dispensing and their needs. Actually, it came down to the fact that they had a lot of new staff and some of them didn't have very good product knowledge, so they weren't able to recommend and understand the benefits of the newer and better quality lenses and the benefits of additional pairs and things like photochromics and polarized lenses. So they weren't recommending those to patients, then were less likely to take those offers. So therefore, average order was down, and then overall cost of 5 practices, sales were down. So from this, we can then think about setting our training needs based on starting with a problem or perhaps a goal you want to set. We can then filter that down to thinking about the jobs and the tasks that are involved in delivering that goal or solving that problem. And then when it comes down to the individual, the person that's going to receive the training, we need to think about their knowledge, skills and abilities. And what I've added in here is attitude, because that's actually really important as well. And we need to have people within the business that actually have the right ethos and attitudes to it. I worked with an area manager quite a few years ago when I was fully employed, who said that if you can't change the people, change the people. And that is that, if people are in your business without the right attitude, they're not going to deliver what you need as a team or as an organisation. So we need to think about this knowledge, skills and abilities piece. And this is, again, the main part of the training needs analysis. So whether it's you undertaking this or you're getting somebody else to come in and do it for you, our starting point is normally looking at a job descriptor. So these things usually tend to be out of date when we look at them, so often they need a bit of updating. Some employers don't have them at all. You might have developed one when you last recruited somebody, but you may find that that's not right anymore. If you don't have a job descriptor, then if you're a SiteCare member, if you go to the SiteCare website and look at resources, there actually are some job descriptors on there you can download and use as templates. And they've got them there for practice managers, optoms, DOs, receptionists. There's about 7 or 8 different ones on there you can download as a starting point for if you don't have one of these already. Other areas we normally look at in looking at what people need to be able to do to fill a role is actually asking the individuals themselves, what is it that you think you need to be able to do to fulfill your role? Often that's actually done as an individual or as a group by asking people. If we're dealing with somebody who's got people across more than one site, then it normally be a little questionnaire instead. And the third method you can use actually is an observational role, which obviously if you're an optometrist or testing, then that's going to be more difficult. If you're a practice manager, it's a bit easier to just observe people in their roles and what is it that they do. And also think about what you want them to be able to do. So that process is going to generate a list of knowledge, skills and abilities. We can then get people individually to rate their competence and how capable they feel in those areas. So normally keep it simple, you just range in 1 to 4, from not confident or not competent up to always confident, always competent. And just seeing where people feel that they are. And competence and competence don't always go hand in hand. Sometimes someone can be highly competent and not be competent, and vice versa. But it's important to look at those areas because that's going to help us identify where the gaps are. So the whole point of training analysis is to try and bridge that gap from where people are at the moment in their current performance and behaviours through to where we want them to be. And where do we want these people, what desires do we have these people to be able to do for us in the business? And it's that gap that we're going to try and fill with the training. So it was important then that once we've got this list and we know what the people need to be trained on, we've highlighted the areas that it is, whether it's dealing with the patients on the phone, is it still with sort of pre-screening, is it still with frame selection? They're all different aspects, and it may be different from each individual people, and that's where some businesses go wrong, is that they do a paintbrush approach of just saying that everybody's going to have the same training, and actually that's not the best way to spend your training budget. You need to focus it on what individuals need and ideally look at something where you can tailor it to individual needs rather than just giving everybody the same, because everybody doesn't have the same skill set. So when it comes to the planning stage, you're going to have some considerations. So you're going to need to think about what it is you want to develop, and that's why it's important to have that analysis to know that person A might need something, but then person B might need something else. There'll be some commonalities around this, but there'll be some customization needed. And so ideally you want to work with something where you can have more control over what the training they're going to have. You think about the timeline and how soon you want them to be able to achieve that, and being realistic as well. Whether that's 1 month, 6 months, over the course of the next year, if you want to drip feed it in. Also thinking about your budget, because that's going to allow you to access certain options over others. Some businesses only want to spend £100, others might want to spend a couple of £1,000. I expect after lockdown you might be more towards £100 rather than thousands of pounds, but there are different levels of options out there for you. We always think about the person's availability, so when will they carry out the training? Because if you're going to put 4 staff on a workshop, the chances are that workshop's going to be on one day, and you're going to all of a sudden have 4 people out of business. That's not going to work. Similarly, if you're going to give people something to do online, you've got to think about when will they access that. Are they going to have an hour a week to do something online, or are you going to expect them to do it at home in their own time? And also take it back to their own abilities. So certain courses require certain skill sets. So if somebody wasn't very good at maths, for example, you wouldn't go and put them on a technician's course level 4 where there's lots of maths. So you've got to think about their starting point, and are they ready to take the jump for training, or do they need something in between to bridge the gap to give them better skills before they move on to a particular course. So when it comes to planning, we use the 5 W's. You recognise these as open questions, but what we really ask is, the first question to ask, from our point of view as a sort of planner and plan training, is, why do people need this training? What is it? And that's kind of linking back to the in training analysis and the organisational goal or problem. Also think about who are the participants. So who is going to be doing the training? Is it a receptionist? Is it a practice manager? Is it an optometrist? So we found, when we've done things like workshops, we get quite a mixture of people. The last workshop we did, we had a manager and a receptionist from the same practice. So different roles, but actually they had different experiences, and that made quite a dynamic workshop. But similarly, if you're doing something online or involved something on a distance learning course, you've got to think about who is that course aimed at? Is it about that person? Thinking back to that knowledge, skills, and abilities, what's the content of the training? So does it contain what that person needs and what you think they should be trained on? There's the when, so when it's going to take place, and the where it's going to be in your practice or online. So by doing this model, we'll then know what the expected outcomes are going to be from the training. From the training point, you've got to think about how many people are going to do the training, and it might be that you do several different methods of training. Might be using mixed approach is pretty good. Take into account that the people's experiences. You're going to know that you've got the right topics of content, and that the course is going to provide the right resources. There's no good them just saying this is what we're going to cover. It's how they're going to cover it. Have they got the right resources to deliver that training? And then you can plan in then the when. So when you expect them to do it, if it's online, is it flexible or is it fixed dates and times? And that's going to fit into your business diary. And then the final, there's that location. So at the moment, we're going to be doing virtually face-to-face stuff because of lockdown and social distancing. But are there opportunities for in-practice training to be coming to you, or the stuff you can do online or distance learning to achieve those goals? So we've got the different methods. So the face-to-face is usually the most expensive, but actually some people find it really good because you've got that dedicated small group training. Yeah, distance learning. So some people enjoy that because of the flexibility. So face-to-face is usually fixed. You've got these set session times. Distance learning is usually more flexible, but there is that issue of people can, for example, isolated to doing it on their own. Whereas if you've got a couple of people in the practice who are doing the same course, then all of a sudden you've got two people, they almost form a study group, and that actually motivates people to stay on the course and stick to it. We have online learning, so that's most of our course at Insight, where people can actually log in on tablets, phones, different computers, and actually do more bite-sized chunks of learning. And then the fourth type is a blended learning approach, where it's trying to mix in the benefits of the face-to-face with the benefits of distance learning. That comes to be more complex to manage because of the different elements, but for some types of learning that works really well. So in terms of options, we've got lots of different things to look at. And I've tried to put these in order of cost and time, starting with the quickest and cheapest down to the most expensive and the longest to achieve. So start off with, it might be an online session, such as some of the Optical Assistant webinars that Sitekid has been offering over the last few weeks and I've been delivering. Something that's quite short, one-off online, simple to do. The training could be an offline activity, something like a CET article where you just have a magazine there and read through it. It might be a practical session, so perhaps you're showing someone how to use the autorefractor or how to reflow the supra. It might be a structured workshop where actually you've got a mixture of theory and practical, so that tell, show and do principle. It might be a course that involves a short course, so something about something that's available on the Sitekid website. Some of these short 4 or 5 week short courses just to give someone a specific skill. Or it might be something that's actually a longer course, actually is a qualification at the end of it, and actually having a recognised qualification that they can take away from that training as an end result. Now, linked with training is usually some kind of assessment. So some things maybe not assessed at all. So the webinars we did the last few weeks, they've had no assessment, it's just been literally a login and watch. Something might be a knowledge check. So think about the CET quiz, normally there'll be some questions at the end to answer, and those just checking that you've actually covered the objectives. And there might be an actual structured exam involved, even if it's a course. There might be an assignment. So a lot of the stuff we do at Insight actually covers knowledge checks, exams and assignments to try and give that a broader mix. So with an assignment, you're actually pulling together knowledge that you learn and then applying it to a scenario. And there might be a practical session. And the last option is a portfolio of evidence. So that's usually for larger qualifications or apprenticeships, which we're going to come on to later on. So it is important to actually look at that assessment bit as well as the actual training itself and how it's going to be assessed, if it is assessed at all, and how that could impact on the outcomes. Which leads us on to the fifth element, which is this evaluation of learning. So a lot of businesses we've worked with haven't done this properly in the past, but there's 4 levels of evaluation. There's the first level, which is the reaction stage. So how did somebody feel about their training? So you could just ask when they got back, how was that workshop, or how did you find that online course? And we do it by doing evaluations, and we send people questionnaires or some short surveys to just get some feedback on what their highs and lows of the sessions. And the second level is actually their learning. So what is it they learned? Now, if someone's done an assignment or an exam, then actually there's some proof of actually have they learned something, but there's nobody actually asking them, what is it you've learned, actually if they can remember. Now the third area, and this is where as business it's important to make sure you're getting good return on your investment in training, is actually the behavioural level. So has that piece of learning, whatever it is, has it actually changed someone's behaviour in their job? Because if someone then is exhibiting the right behaviours that you want, you know it's achieved its aim. And most importantly for an organisation is actually, has that training led to a change in results? Has it led to a positive change? And from that you can then say, yes, actually there's been a good return on that investment in training. You know then that it's worked, and then that actually then give you that momentum then to spend some more because you know you've got a good return on that investment. If you're not evaluating training properly, then literally you're spending money without knowing whether it's working or not. And in order to get the most out of training, with a training provider, we need to make sure that we're providing this information in a way that actually most people are going to benefit from it. And we all learn in different ways. And the most common model of that is the VARK model. So visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic. So people learn by seeing, listening, doing, or reading. So this is a model going back to the late 70s. It's still really heavily used within learning development sectors because actually it's got a lot of evidence behind it now that although people are not exclusive to one of these, we have personal preferences of how we like to learn. So I know that actually I'm more towards visual and a little bit of auditory and reading, but that's visual my predominant method of learning. For somebody else, it might be listening. So it's important then, therefore, that when we're developing material, we're developing training in a way that's going to cater for all types of learners and not just saying that here's something to read, off you go, learn the course. That's not helping the other types of learners. So I say no one's exclusive to one of these, but they have a preference. So the first style is the visual learner, so that's using their eyes. They like to be able to see things and visualise them in their heads. So that's things like graphs, diagrams, charts, helps them to be able to take information and visualise it in their head. So if you're a visual learner, the best way to achieve that really is things like colour coding and the use of flashcards to remember diagrams and pictures, formulas. Actually doing diagrams as well to take, if you've just got plain text, trying to take that into a diagrammatic format to remember it. And these people tend to like using sort of post-it notes positioned around with different sort of phrases and lists on them. So this is where having something material that's quite visual is going to be good. So does the training have access to lots of pictures, diagrams? Does it use things like infographics as well, which is a great way to get information across social media, is having that graphical representation. The auditory learner is biased towards using their ears to listen to things. So these people quite like webinars and lectures. Similarly, they will also like to have a discussion with somebody. So they like to talk about what it is they've learned, and that discussion helps it to sink in. But also they like things like sort of podcasts and YouTube videos and things like that as well. So for our auditory learners, you sometimes find that sometimes they actually read things aloud. They prefer things sort of discussions or group-based activities. And there will be people that seek out things like podcasts and videos. And when it comes to revision, they benefit best from actually recording voice memos of listen things and then listen to it back to help it sink in, rather than just reading it. Which brings on to the third type, so the read writer. So these are the people that quite like to get the books and the traditional texts to read. They're also quite likely to make lists and to seek out books from the library, for example. So the tips we have for these type of people is actually reviewing handouts. They'll tend to make notes on them. Either recommendations of books or providing knowledge. So in Insight, all our courses, we provide a manual with them. Now within that we do have diagrams and things as well to help it be colourful for the more visual person. But for the reader type, they find these really beneficial as opposed to the online resources that link to that, like the videos that we have online as well, to try and cater different learning types. The read writer are the sort of people that actually tend to rewrite things as well. So if they have any notes, they'll tend to, or text, they'll rewrite it in their own words, and that helps it to sink in. Similarly, these people like assignments. They like to be able to write about what it is that they've learned. And then the last type is the kinesthetics. These are people that prefer to actually do, so they learn by doing rather than being told the theory. So these are people that will get that flat pack from IKEA and they'll have a go at building it without reading the instructions. So for them, it's using senses, it's using being able to touch and experience things, and that's how they learn, by being more hands-on. They also quite like things like role play activities as well, because it's actually getting them to actually do something rather than sitting and being an audience member. So these people tend to prefer studying in short blocks. So if you present these people on a long all-day workshop, you're going to need to know they're going to need lots of breaks during the day in order for it to sink in. Because if you sat in there for a 3-hour optics lecture, that's not going to work for them. They prefer shorter sessions. I said it for role play, and you'll find as well that actually these people tend to revise better when they're actually more active when they're revising. I think for the gym, we see people there on exercise bike, we sort of think in front of them, reading them to help it sink in. And so we're not all exclusive to one of those domains. And the evidence behind the VARP model over the years has developed 2 multimodality modes. So we have a VARP 1 type. So these are people that are more flexible. So they'll actually apply a different preferred learning style to a different situation. So depending on what it is they need to learn will depend on the learning style that works best for them. So again, having a provider that's going to give you lots of different modalities of learning style is going to help them. And there's also the VARP 2 style. So these are the people that traditionally would have been classed as slow learners. So these are people that actually need to actually complete their learning by experiencing different modalities. So somebody who perhaps has to attend a lecture and read a handout and do an assignment, and using different learning styles to complete that learner journey. And the VARC people actually tend at the end of it to have a better grasp and understanding and a better long-term remembering of that knowledge, but they need it in different formats in order to achieve the learning. If you're interested in VARC, then actually if you Google VARC questionnaire, you can find that the questionnaire is online. It's less than 20 questions. There's multiple choice, so you've got your 4 answers there. And then with that, there's an answer sheet that helps you then to pick out which type you are, because it grades each of the multiple choice answers a letter code, and then you can see which is the more popular. If you got online, Content Bin Insight, because we've got it, because we use it on some of our focus groups for new training material. So we've looked at the training journey, and we said about the importance of actually have that learning being impactful and changing behaviour and performance. And that brings on to another model, which is the Kolb reflective cycle. So we class that as the do, review, conclude and adapt. So by doing something, i.e. the piece of training, whatever that might be, once one's completed that, they can either review it, so that's like an assessment, or perhaps they actually cause to reflect on what it is that they've learnt. After that, we get the conclusion of what it is they've learnt, or perhaps what it is that they're actually able to do. And then that leads to the adaptation phase, so how they change their behaviour, and from that change in behaviour, that then impacts on the performance, and they're going to perform better. So that's a simplified version. The more academic version is the experiential learning cycle, which is what we were taught as lecturers when training at university, which is around this actual experience, observation, conceptualisation, experimentation. But effectively, it's what's on the right is the complex version, what's on the left. And it's really actually taken that, yes, you've done the training, but it's what comes after the training and actually putting that training to good use. There's no good sense on a training course if it's not going to change their behaviour and performance at the end of it. So they need to follow this cycle and be sure they can be supported to actually achieve this, achieve a good outcome on the training. So that was a lot of theory stuff about training models, which as an L&D person for me, that's quite interesting about how people learn and how, as a training provider, we can best support people to learn and the resources that we provide to suit different learning styles. But what training is actually available out there? So first of all, there's what's been put in lockdown, which is webinars. So Sitecare has a library of webinars that have been done over lockdown. I know I've delivered quite a few of those myself, but there's been other ones as well. If you look online, you'll be able to review back and look at those again. So there's no harm actually sending people the links to them to go and watch that just for 50 minutes, an hour to learn something. The opposite ones that I know I did, where you had understanding UV light, low vision aids, body language. Last week's on contact lenses, but there's been other ones as well around things like dry eye as well. There's a whole library of them that you can access for free on the Sitecare website as a membership benefit. So that's a nice sort of short, quick things. Since Insight's been working and partnering with Sitecare, we developed some workshops. The workshops at the moment aren't running because of the situation we're in with lockdown and social distancing. There is still the option of bespoke day or half day course in your practice. But again, I think once we get towards opening, we're going to see a certain influx of patients that may not be an ideal option for you. Yeah, the alternative one that is also available are individual short courses or online modules. So again, as a Sitecare member, you can access these. If you go to sitecare.co.uk/training, you'll see the top part is about the workshop. If you scroll down to online learning, there's a link there that takes you through to a list of these academy modules you can do. There's 10 standalone modules. As you see on the right here, there's a list of all the different things they cover, from about the eye itself through to introduce people to frames or lenses, contact lenses, screening processes, lens treatments, that's like tints and coatings, understand the glazing process, fitting spectacles and repairing them. So this is all just a list of, they're short courses, around about 4 to 6 weeks, that you can access. As a Cycling member, you get quite a big discount on these, and they can be started at any time of the year, and people can do some of them at home as well. They don't have to be in work to do these. If I want something a bit different to a short course, I want to do a proper course that leads to a qualification. We offer some of those as well. So at Insight, our courses are endorsed by NCFE, so that's a national awarding body accredited with Ofqual. And they accredit our training and they issue the qualification at the end. So at the moment we have our level 2. So this is for people fairly new to optics or haven't got a formal qualification at all. We offer a certificate level. So that's where you or the learner picks 4 modules that are most relevant to them. This is that customization element. You can pick what suits individual people, and you might have people doing different units in your business, and that's fine because you're tailoring it to what they need. Certificate is usually only around about 5 to 6 months of training. And then we also have a diploma. That's a much bigger course, so 8 units. Most people would take around about 10 to 12 months to complete that, to get their qualification at the end. And then beyond that, there's a more advanced one, which is the level 3 version. This is a bit more for experienced people or people that want slightly more sort of supervisory capacity and have a bit more experience. And again, we have a customizable certificate or a diploma. If you're watching this and you're in Scotland, we receive some money from NEST, so NHS Education Scotland every year, and they help fund a Scotland level 5 and level 7, so that's the equivalent to the UK level 2 and level 3. And they helped fund this certificate in Scotland. They run from April to December, and we have a set amount of places available with that one every year. So whereas the level 2 and level 3 are open all year round with no fixed start date, can start whenever. If you look out on our website online, during January, February and March every year, we open these up to applications so that people can start in February, and you see about 80% of the funding comes from the Scottish Government. Also take a look, because next year we've got some courses around audiology coming online. So if you do hearing care in your practice and you want your staff to have a little bit of understanding about hearing care, we're going to be offering a course on that. So it's level 2 again, so quite entry level, but it will give you the basics, be able to handle a lot of the general questions that people have when they come in to ask about hearing care. So a little plug for us really, why do these courses? Well, most of our courses start any time of the year, so you don't worry about start dates. We don't worry about strict weekly timetables because work does get in the way, family life gets in the way. You can't dedicate the same amount of time every single week to doing something. That's also why we don't bother with having weekly assignments, because if you've only got a few hours available and you have to do a weekly assignment, people end up spending more time on the assignment rather than on the actual learning, which is a bit of a waste of time really. You want people to spend time learning something before you actually assess them. In terms of our qualifications, they do have some exams, but we set those online tests. Take about half an hour, and people do them in their practice, and we run them all year round. So you're not worried about trying to tie up your training to timetables. We are flexible enough to be able to set the assessment around individual learners. So when somebody is ready, they can apply for the exam and take it, rather than having to wait until June or December. We run them throughout the year, and because I do them in the practice, it's nice and quick, half hour just to squeeze into a working week. As I say, we've got our printed manuals. We do a lot of online stuff with that manual. Links in this, they work together. So you have the printed colour manual, and then there's the online. So there's videos, presentations, downloadable resources. We also do self-marking, sort of self-check quizzes to check knowledge as people go through the training, so they know if they're actually learning or not, and how that will boost their confidence before they take any test. And we're also quite lucky because since we started, we've got quite a good network of experienced tutors and, of course, the examiners as well at the end that help to make sure we're providing good quality training through the endpoint assessment. And we also develop it online with our app. So that's allowed people not only to access it on their desktops at home or work, but also on their phones, tablets, whether it's Windows, Android, iOS. And the practices that are spending a bit more money, because we only work with independents, we don't work with any of the multiples or any of the big chains. We do offer these industry payment plans, so we can discuss with you how you want to. Do you want to pay it up front, which if you're doing a short course is fine. If you're putting somebody through a qualification that's going to take them several months, you might want to pay a bit as they go, and that's fine as well. Particularly at the moment, the cash flow is a little bit slower, you might want to be able to break it down to smaller payments. The other thing that's coming up later this year is the Optician Apprenticeship. Now, this apprenticeship has been available for a couple of years now, but it's only been available to the likes of Specsavers and Boots because they've got training departments and they've already been drawing down government funding in the past. So they're levy payers. So if you are if you have a wage bill of £3 million or more, you pay a levy, and that levy goes to apprenticeship fund, and then you draw it down to pay for training. Insight, we partnered with a very experienced company called Training 2000 that run a lot of different apprenticeships and have a lot of experience in government processes and funding. And they're part of the University of Central Lancashire, which offers dispensing optician courses in optometry. So this partnership between us, our three groups, means that we're going to have a pathway that can take someone as a new recruit into optics at level 2 and take them all the way through as far as they want to go, whether that's to a level 6 dispensing optician, a level 7 master's in optometry, or maybe even a professional doctorate in optometry. So we're going to have that nice career ladder in place, hopefully starting in October this year, when we sign the contract later this month to start the marketing. Now, as independent practices, you're not been able to access this before, and also you're not paying the apprenticeship levy. But through working with Training 2000, we can access government funding for you, which means that actually you will only pay a small proportion of the fees. So the idea is that 80% of the apprenticeship fee will be drawn down from the government funds, and you'll just pay 20% of the cost over the course of their 12-month apprenticeship. So it's going to give you access to the same sort of training that the large companies have been benefiting from over the last few years. Our one's a bit different. So with this level 2 apprenticeship, we're making it as a dual award. So NCFE will also be including within the apprenticeship the level 2 diploma. So at the end, someone doesn't just complete their apprenticeship training, they actually complete a proper qualification as well. Now you can do this in 2 ways. There will be 2 routes. The first one being if you want to upskill some of your existing staff. So if you've got somebody that doesn't have any formal qualification in optics, or perhaps they are doing only reception duties and you want to be involved in dispensing, then you can offer them an apprenticeship contract, and Training 2000 will work with you to offer that person a new contract as their apprentice. The alternative, which is more popular in other sectors, is the new starter approach, where you decide you want to take on an apprentice, and then Training 2000 can help you to find somebody who wants to become an apprentice, optical assistant. They will vet them for you, and that means that the people that actually apply for your apprenticeship role will be people that actually have the right skill set to start. So keep an eye on the Insight website for that, or if you want to take down my email address at the end, you can email me and we can keep updated as when that starts to go live. We're going to have about 20 places starting this October as our first cohort, and then for next year we'll be having several intakes during the year. And that's our general website email address as well, if you wanted just to see email that one. Those emails will get passed on to me if they involve apprenticeships. So just another option that's going to be available to you. And the thing with apprenticeship is it's much more practice based, so it does involve a lot more of not only theory but also practical skills as well. Now, what's coming more speedily and going to come later this year is with Site Care. Insight and Site Care got together to launch Practice Performance. This is a series of online webinars that are interactive webinars, and each of the 3 modules we've got planned, we did, of course, 4 online sessions they can access from home or from work. And these are going to cover different topics, and the idea is that the different sessions will be around one different theme for the certificate and the module. The first one we've got is the presbyopia module, so that's going to look at the 4 sessions and the ageing eye, multifocal lenses, spent intermediate distances, and presbyopia correction for contact lenses. So these are phrased as a short course. So people can log in for our webinar over the course of 4 weeks and have that interactive webinar training. Actually, Cycling members get around about 50% discount on that. And just we're actually providing that engagement that they might have got on a formal face-to-face workshop, but delivered in an online format for them, without you having to send them away from the practice for a whole day or pay the travel costs. They can do it in small 4 chunks while actually in the practice. We're going to have the presbyopia module. The other module we're going to have is the dispensing module, looking at the aspects of dispensing, so your safety eyewear, tints and different coatings, in particular sort of blue light coatings, driving lenses, looking at sports eyewear, things like photochromics and polarized lenses, and also the high RX dispensing, so things like your +8s, your -10s, and how we can best manage those patients. And then the third certificate module that is going to be quite popular is going to be for the new to optics people. So this is somebody who's not been in business very long. This is going to look at the anatomy of the eye, what's involved in an eye exam, and as well as covering the understanding of prescriptions and introduce them to what spectacle lenses are, just to give them that good foundation knowledge in your business. So those are coming later this year. So keep an eye out. They'll be available through Site Care, and as members you'll get a really good discount on those. So the last bit to touch on are the changes to the CET cycle. So professional colleagues, CET is going and it's being replaced with CPD. So for the new cycle starting January 2022, it can be the CPD cycle. No more core competencies, they're going, and they're being replaced with the standards of practice. The standards of practice document came in this cycle, and that's available on their website already, and there's 19 standards that they think that professional should have within optics. By having a CPD cycle that other health professions have got, it's more flexible. You can tailor to your specific working environment and how you operate, as well as actually trying to promote you to develop new skills as well. As a provider, we're going to have some new rules as well to follow for the new system of CPD, and part of that is auditing. So providers, we're going to be 10% of us will be audited every year. As registrants, 10% of you at the end of the cycle will be audited for your CPD as well. I'm doing a blog post about this for Site Care, so in the July newsletter there'll be a piece in there about this change in more detail. But just sort of show some of the elements around it. So some bits are staying the same. So it's still going to be a 3-year cycle. You're still going to need your 36 points, of which half are interactive. If you're a therapeutic optometrist, you're still going to need your 54 points, so your 36 normal ones and your 18 therapeutic graded ones. CLOs like me are going to still need our 18 contact lens points. And although reflection and peer review is still a core part of this cycle, DOs won't have to do peer review, it's still going to be for optometrists and CLOs. So those elements are like we do now with CET. But the biggest change really is this moving away from the core competencies. So we've got our standards of practice. They're going to be divided into 4 domains around professionalism, clinical practice, communication, and leadership and accountability. So certainly domains 2 and 3 are going to be very similar to what we do now. And the idea, over the 3 years, you do 1 piece of CET across each of these domains. We've actually got to do 36 points. Getting 1 in each should be fairly straightforward, so less onerous, less of a tick box exercise. The big element of this is around reflection. So at the beginning of this, I was talking about actual reflection and the reflective cycle. This is going to be key in the new CPD cycle. So at the beginning, when we register in January 2022, we're going to have to develop a CPD plan, and the GOC are putting together some guidance around that, and guidance on reflection as well for us. And during the cycle, we expect to do a certain amount of reflection on our learning as well. And at one point in the cycle, whether it's during or at the end, we need to have a reflective professional conversation with a colleague. It won't have to be identical colleagues. So it doesn't mean that optometrists speak to optometrists and a DO speaks to a DO. You can speak to another health professional. That doesn't have to be the same profession. That could be an ophthalmologist, an orthoptist, a ophthalmic nurse, your optometrist, your CLO. And that's to actually reflect your CPD plan to make sure that it's relevant and that you've got the right objectives in there. So guidance is going to be coming out on this, but it's a way really of actually reflecting on that plan of action and that knowledge you're gaining. So that's a bit more in depth than CET at the moment, where we just sort of turn up, do something and then accept the point. The new scheme is going to be more around actually reflecting on that knowledge you gained, but across less competencies. So I'll tell you more about that in the July blog. Site care. That's the end of this presentation. If you've got any questions, we've got a question answer box for you to ask any questions. If you want to contact me, got my email address website there. Also on Twitter. Don't forget to look at the SiteCare website, so sitecare.co.uk/training, because that will show you what's available direct through SiteCare, and that's where you'll be able to access those new webinar-based interactive modules when they come out in a couple of months' time. Also, don't forget, it's some way away for next year, but in February, March next year, we've got the 20th of February to 1st of March is the SiteCare conference. That's a really good opportunity to bring your teams along, because that's got stuff for business owners, managers, professionals. Insight, we're going to be there running some workshops for support staff as well. So my final point really is there's lots of different training options out there. If you're going to be spending money on training, spend it wisely, work out what it is you actually need. If in doubt, speak to providers as well. We can help you discuss those options and what's best for you. And ideally plan it out. Think about what it is you want people to achieve and by when. And there's options out through SiteCare for all types of interactions of face-to-face, online, distance learning. So do take a look. And ask away. We're here. So I've got a couple of questions. So I've got something about apprenticeships in Wales. At the moment, Training 2000 is only registered the apprenticeship provider in England. So our first group will be for England. Once we know that works and we can prove the system works, we can look at other areas. Certainly within Scotland has its own independent system, completely different from the UK, and Scotland developed its own apprenticeship separate from England. So yes, we are looking at Wales and Northern Ireland, but at the moment, as a new option, new provider, we're starting off with England, because that way we can get the numbers easily to start off our first cohort. But once that first lot starts in October, then we can look at Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So yeah, that should be something hopefully to come in the not too distant future there. Someone asked about pricing. So yeah, there are some prices on the Sitecare and Insight websites. So the upcoming Interact short courses that are webinar based are going to be £80 for Sitecare members. If you want to do the proper qualifications, then the level 2 certificate is £400 and diploma £800. When you're applying, if you let us know you're a Sitecare member, you get 10% discount off of that. So with that, I think it's quite competitive there. £400 to get a formal qualification across 4 modules. We think it's pretty good. Another question about apprenticeships. People do training prior to the apprenticeship. So the apprenticeship as a timeline is fixed, that it has to be 12 months of training. If somebody has already done elements of the training, then yes, there is accreditation of prior learning. And as part of the application, so when an individual applies to start the apprenticeship, we go through their actual current knowledge and previous training experience, and where they've actually already completed some of the elements of the apprenticeship, we can sign those off at the beginning, so that during their 12 months, because it can't be less than 12 months, they will have less to do then in that training. So they don't have to repeat what they've already learnt. There is that ability in there to do that, and that's one of the advantages of Insight partnering with Train 2000, is that we've got the experience, they've got the experience of apprenticeships, so it kind of works quite nicely. Another question about is the training conducted via online elements, or is it off-site learning? So yeah, we have got some off-site in terms of workshops, but we paused those for this year because of the coronavirus, and we're going to restart those in the new year, starting with the Sitecare conference in February. In terms of the online elements, we've got those interactive online courses, which are delivered purely online as short sessions, whereas the Insight Academy and the courses are main distance learning with the online elements. In terms of the apprenticeships, the method we're using, because we're linking it with our level 2 qualification, the apprentice will receive their learning packs to the practice. They'll get the big manuals with some of the theory elements in, but the most of the training is conducted on site for them to be able to, although technically they have to do some of their training was off the job, most of it actually is delivered through doing things in the workplace to build up their portfolio, but also through online elements. So rather than us organising lots of workshops, instead we are going to have interactive webinars as part of the apprenticeship. So as somebody starts a different module, because the apprenticeship is made up of 10 modules, every time the apprentice starts a new module, there will be an interactive online session with me or one of my other trainers discussing the theory and how to complete that module. The apprentice will also have a personal tutor that monitors their progress through the apprenticeship, and they will have regular phone calls or Skype conversations with them. The idea really is to keep the apprentice with you in the workplace as much as possible, rather than having to keep pulling them out for stuff. We can do most of it through online methods or visiting the workplace to see the apprentice as a supportive role, we will do. So we're not going to make them be away for weeks at a time on blocks or anything, because that's not very practical for business owners. We're going to keep most of it as a mixture of online and distance learning with you. Perfect. So that brings us very nicely to the end of our hour. So if you've got any questions, feel free to email me anytime. And then to keep an eye on the Sitecare website, so sitecare.co.uk/training, because there's good stuff on there, and we've got more stuff coming up over the next few months as well, not just the apprenticeships, but say the online webinars as well. So thank you very much for your time, I hope you've found that really useful. But don't forget, Insight is a partner of Sitecare, so we are here to support you guys as independents. So please do feel free, if you've got questions, not just about friendship, but just about CT or anything else, you know, please do ask anytime. Thank you.